All right, here we go. I feel like my pocket is full of stuff. I mean, that's true, it is, but it's not what I'm thinking it should be full of. Anyway, I have not actually uploaded anything yet, but I can. I have the videos prepared to upload. I just need to upload them. So hopefully I can do that. And that looks like a raccoon. Anyway, hopefully I can do that and get these things back ahead of schedule. Like I said, the goal is to get 7 videos pumped out. So if I were to get if I were to record 2 today and 2 tomorrow, then I'm good there and I don't have to do any more videos. But I'll probably try and film 2 more on Friday so that I can just continue to peel ahead of things. But it's a fun adventure that we're on, and I hope that good things can happen and good things can come of it. I really want to take this time to... I watched an interesting video about the music industry and the music sales and music distribution, and how Spotify and internet radio has really sorely ruined the industry. And I just, like, it's been an issue ever since there has been a version of home media, if you will. There has always been a way to very cheaply replicate what the internet produces, or the internet, what music is bought versus what music is pirated or not. I don't know. I would say the glory days of music buying was probably like the 80s into the 90s. There was like a CD boom in the 90s after CDs came out and were crowned like the premier medium. A lot of people were finally replacing their vinyl collections, replacing their cassette collections with CDs, because most people didn't wholeheartedly replace their vinyl, cassette, and or 8-track collections with anything of within those realms. But for whatever reason, when CDs came out, it was universally accepted as the future, and a lot of people replaced their collections at that time. But music has been thwarted with piracy and things of that nature for a while. The idea of blank CDs, being able to buy an album and then burn a copy for your friend to have so that they don't have to go out and buy it. And same with cassettes. You could record on the cassettes. You could record cassettes directly off the radio, in fact. And people have been fighting those sorts of battles for a very long time. What I think revolutionized it was the internet, which the internet revolutionized so many things. But these file sharing sites opened up where people would upload all of their MP3 files, and anybody who's anybody could go on there and download them all. And unfortunately, in that regards, once the damage is done, it cannot be undone. People would get just a big old hard drive and download people's entire collections, and that's tens of thousands of songs that you now own that you just acquired within seconds, and you no longer needed to buy the album. I watched a financial video about music and how to support music financially and all of these things, and they talked about how at that time music slipped in people's minds as something that was an unpaid service. Like, you don't pay for music. And once that has slipped into people's minds, it is very hard for it to unslip, as change, as any of us know, change is a difficult thing. And so when we reached that point, they were very desperately looking for something to revive the industry, and along come streaming platforms, which in theory for the casual listeners is perfect. The issue being that it does not fund most musicians very well. It will fund the popular few very well, and then the others more or less just have their music on that platform and hope people discover it and go out of their way to support them. But that is ultimately the exception to the rule. And things have largely always been that way. Even when music consumption was at its all-time high and people were buying CDs and cassettes at the regular, there was still a good chunk of people who were perfectly fine with just listening to whatever the radio was playing for them. And so now we have an increase in the amount of people who are just fine with listening to whatever the radio is playing for them. And the radio is now more diverse than it's ever been before, and it's more accessible than it's ever been before, and it is mainstream. Like, I can just tell this algorithm what I like, and it will play things that I like. And for those surface enjoyers of music, it is perfect. Like, I can't even sit here and pretend like it's not. I am a deeper enthusiast of music and an artist myself, so I go out of my way to support the musicians that I enjoy, and I buy goo gobs of music. But at the end of the day, I am the rare breed among them all. And so if I'm the rare breed, then how is any musician really getting successful these days? And I think tours have a lot to do with it, but tours are expensive. Like, it costs a lot of money to go on tour, and I don't know what that profit margin looks like. Do you spend, I don't know, $100,000 just to go on tour, and then you get $200,000 back? Who knows? But it's also just a general exhausting way to be, and people don't sympathize that much with musicians or with artists, and they're like, well, they should be happy that they just can be able to go out there and do that. And it's like, yes, they should be happy and thankful that they have the opportunities that they have. But I mean, you could say that to anybody. Like, you should be happy that you have the opportunities that you have, and everybody should be able to say that to anybody and everybody else. But at the end of the day, like, as appreciators of art, we should also understand that, like, they need to make a living doing this. If we want their art in our lives, then we need to support them so that they can make a living doing it. It's just the same as the local bakery or whatever local yokel thing is going on. Like, if we're going to sustain, then we need to be able to continue doing what we do. And I say all this because I watched a video this morning where this guy was, and I don't know that he was anybody like real impactful in the industry. I'd never heard of the dude before, and he was just, to me, seemed to be like some random guy on YouTube. But he was talking about how musicians need to leverage Spotify as a promotional platform and not as a actual serious revenue like stream. And I think that that's an interesting strategy. I would be interested to see how it works, because his suggestion was basically putting the singles or the little TikTok pieces on the streaming platforms, and then making your fans buy the entire album instead of putting the entire album on streaming platforms. But I'm curious as to how many people would actually go out of their way to buy the album. I feel like the people who go out of their way right now to buy the album would be the very same people who would still continue to go out of their way to buy the album. I don't think that by only putting singles and TikTok mixes on Spotify, I don't think you're going to see that big of an uptick in album sales, because a majority of your audience only want the singles anyway. They only want the Spotify. There's not very many people out there who is so invested in your work that they want to buy the album, the entire body of work. And even those who are buying albums are particular in the way in which they do so. I will only buy physical albums. I do not buy digital albums. And so, for that matter, I, as someone who is one of the more prolific album buyers in the world today, will not buy them digital. It's maybe the same fallacy, same concept that my financial channel was talking about, and that I have this idea that one should not pay for digital music. If I'm buying something, I'm buying a physical something. I'm buying a CD, I'm buying a vinyl, I'm buying a cassette. I can load your music up on YouTube any time, any day, and listen to it for free. Why would I essentially pay for the right to do that? And that just doesn't make sense. I have made very few exceptions, because in this modern age there is not a demand for CDs, cassettes, and or vinyl. Most people will release their albums in all of those formats just for the sake of doing so, but there's not a major demand for it. And so any time that I run into a musician with whom I am particularly fond of, and they finally release an album, or if they release their first album, I might entertain buying it digitally just to support them. But for the most part, I don't buy digital. And that's what his plan was, is that you more or less force people into buying the digital album by not offering it on these streaming platforms. And it's been an age-old debate. People have always been saying that Pandora and Spotify and these internet radio stations are really shortchanging artists. And they are. And at the end of the day, they have a business to uphold. And they are feeding the business end of musicians, because the record labels and the record companies, more often than not, tend to be the people making the money in these deals, because they're like, we'll take all of Columbia Records' catalog and we'll pay Columbia Records $30 million a year for their catalog or whatever. And then if Columbia Records has Taylor Swift might see $2 million of that a year or something. But if Columbia Records also has Billy Bob, who's not nearly as popular, he might see $120 a year out of that. And it's just, it is a competitive market. It has always been a competitive market. It just feels less fair than it used to. I've not been professionally involved in the music industry ever, but like, you hear horror stories just about from every decade of people getting screwed out of their rights, screwed out of their revenue, screwed out of whatever. And it's like, is this just the modern age screwing of the music industry, so to speak? Or is this truly more devastating than it's ever been before? And I do think that it is a bit of both. It most certainly is the modern day way of being screwed over by the music industry. But I also think that it is a bit there. The profits are more shallow, but I also think it's because the competition is more prolific. When physical media ruled the roost in terms of anything really, it was a lot more difficult for people to get out into the world, because in order to make a physical thing, that is intrinsically more work than typing up a Word document and then selling the PDF as your book. And so I use quotations. I'm not saying that ebooks are fake books, but they are more easy to write and produce than paperbacks are, or hardcovers. And so that is realistically what we're experiencing. It is a lot easier now to make and sell music. Therefore, there is a lot more musicians out in the world trying to make and sell music. And it's like that with any digital platform. It's a lot easier now to make and sell books. And so you have a lot of authors now in the world making and trying to sell books. Everybody wants to, it's weird, everybody wants to find a way out of the 9-to-5 grind, but they're not willing to do a 9-to-5 grind to get out of it. There's not, these get-rich-quick schemes are not reality most of the time. You could maybe get lucky from time to time and have something really blow up for you, but for the most part, if you're gonna make it, you're gonna make it on true grit, hard determination, and most of the time you're just making enough money to live. You're not getting wealthy on it. And that's a reality that I think a lot of people need to realize and struggle to realize, is that like these people are not making just a mountain of money all the time. They are making enough to live, and they're potentially living a more preferred life because they're not on somebody else's time. But with that comes its own stresses. Like, your finances are now completely and utterly in your own hands, and that is not always a good feeling. Independence is something to revere, if you will. I keep saying that I want to get more independent myself and start raising animals and be self-sustaining and not be so reliant on grocery stores, because if grocery stores ever just poof disappeared, how in the world would I start feeding myself? And it's a scary thought, but it's something that the shutdown really kind of opened my eyes to. And I keep trying to tell myself that I need to get into doing that, and I need to start doing that so that I'm not basically a helpless child out here in the world of adults. But a good majority of people would suffer the same problems if society were to collapse. And I don't know that society is going to collapse in that drastic of a way, but it still just feels good to be able to provide for yourself. So one of these days I will jump off that proverbial bridge and do the thing. But it's interesting just observing the current state of the music industry. Again, I don't wholeheartedly believe in the strategy that this guy presented, trying to go back to a world where people buy albums feels like stepping backwards. And so with that, it feels a lot like it's just not the way that it's supposed to be. All right. Well, I appreciate your time. Hopefully I didn't bore you to death with my music talk. Hopefully it was mildly interesting. I thought it was a pretty good concept. And I hope you stop by next time. Thanks, you.